Hello my friends and welcome back to the channel. This is Thordernick here, and today we are taking a look at the Arms Warrior in the Battle for Azeroth Pre-patch. So we've already posted the Fury 8.0 Survival Guide, and this will be the Arms 8.0 Survival Guide. So on paper, Arms has received some of the most significant changes going to BFA of any class in the game. However, the actual playstyle and how everything kind of meshes together, it's going to end up playing very similarly to how it did toward the end of Legion. So let's start by taking a look at the changes that we have to different abilities in the spellbook. So the first change that you'll notice is that our mastery for Arms is now Deep Wounds. It is no longer Colossus Smash damage and then a buff to that damage window. It is now just a bleed that happens over 6 seconds when you use Mortal Strike, Execute, or Blade Storm on an enemy target. So that is a huge damage, changing several expansions worth of the ways that Arms Warrior has worked. So what's Colossus Smash now? Well, let's take a look at that. Colossus Smash is now just a DPS cooldown. It has a 45-second cooldown. It cannot be reset by Tactician anymore. Tactician works with something else in the spellbook that we'll look at in just a minute. And it causes you to deal 30% increased damage to the target that you hit it with. You can take a talent that turns this into an AoE ability, but this is essentially going to be your DPS cooldown baseline that is replacing or the spiritual successor to what Battle Cry was for Arms in Legion. So Colossus Smash is not the rotational damage window buff, it's now a damage cooldown that we'll be using roughly on cooldown. You have a little bit of leeway depending on fight lengths if you want to delay it or if you want to save it for a particular burst phase that's coming up, but we're going to want to use that pretty much as often as it's up, and it gives you a nice damage buff for 10 seconds. Other changes, so Tactician still has the reset based on Rage Spent, but it now resets the cooldown of Overpower. Overpower is now baseline, it is no longer talent. It still cannot be blocked, dodged, or parried. It does decent physical damage, has a 12-second recharge, and increases the damage of your next Mortal Strike by 30%, stacking up to 2 times. So, Overpower is the spiritual successor to the Legion Colossus Smash. You're going to use it, ideally you want to use it twice before you Mortal Strike, and you'll get a really nice big buffed Mortal Strike, which is going to be the bread and butter of your damage as an Arms Warrior. So Mortal Strike has I believe it's a 6-second cooldown reduced by haste, and it does strong damage, and it still has that heal reduction, and that 2300 damage, it's at least hopefully going to be buffed by 30%, sometimes by 60% from your Overpower. Other important changes to mention are that Sweeping Strikes is no longer a talent that you just passively cleave with. It is now an active ability. For 12 seconds, your single target damaging abilities, so that's important, single target damaging abilities, so this would be things like Slam, Overpower, Mortal Strike, Execute, I believe even Colossus Smash works on Sweeping Strikes, will hit one additional target within 8 yards for 75% damage. So this is a really important ability to manage and to make sure that you're using optimally in cleave situations. Note that a lot of the abilities that you're going to be using with Sweeping Strikes will also proc your mastery, so you'll be able to get a little bit more synergy out of that. Slam is still the filler. Rallying Cry is here. It was known as Commanding Shout in Legion. It's back to Rallying Cry, so you give health to your party in Raid. And let's see, Seasoned Soldier just gives you more rage when you crit with your auto attacks. That's not different. Yeah, so pretty much everything else in the base toolkit ends up being the same. So let's take a look. Oh, one thing to mention, Battle Shout is back. One thing that I would recommend that I have done now is make a big center of your screen weak aura that's just going to annoy you if you don't have Battle Shout active, so that you remember to throw it up there. This guy decided to use his too. yeah, so you have that raid buff. Kind of fun to have those back. Let's take a look at the talent tree now. So these are the talents that I've been running with. I think these are going to be the optimal talents for the pre-patch, at least, with one exception. I switched away from Warbreaker because Warbreaker is your AoE Colossus Smash talent, and it replaces Colossus Smash. So I just wanted to show the default ability, but then we'll go ahead and take Warbreaker. That's what I've been using for the most part. It gives you an AoE Colossus Smash, has pretty good synergy with Bladestorm. But we'll get to that when we get to that row. So in tier 15, War Machine gives you more rage, Sudden Death gives you free executes, and Skull Splitter gives you an ability on a mid-range cooldown, 20, I believe it's 20 seconds reduced by haste, something along those lines. It does decent damage and generates 20 rage. So here we've got just kind of passive rage generation, and then also the rage and movement speed buff. I was using this because what I've mostly been doing on ARMS so far is Battlegrounds, and you tend to proc this all the time. Actually, as a side note, one thing I noticed is that in Battlegrounds, you don't even have to be within range or attacking a target. As long as you're close enough to get an honorable kill, you will get a proc for War Machine. So in Battlegrounds, this is really strong. So, I mean, for an example, I was defending Blacksmith and Narathi base in Battleground, and I was getting procs of War Machine even though there was no combat going on at Blacksmith, but there was combat going on at Farm or Stables. So whenever an enemy died, I was getting a proc. So that's just a little aside, but War Machine is good in PvP, really good in open world questing, but probably Sudden Death or Skull Splitter is going to be your go-to in PvE content in raids. Sudden Death gives you a free execute that can be used on any health percentage target, and this is a really good ability. It was stripped away from the ARMS toolkit and put into the Legendary Ring in Legion. It's back as a talent now, and I believe it's simming pretty evenly with Skull Splitter. So this may come down to playstyle, right? Do you want more rage on demand so that you can avoid feeling rage starved at any point in your rotation? Skull Splitter is a good option. If you want that proc and you want to get more big meaty executes in, then you can take Sudden Death. But these are going to be your go-to choices unless you're in content where you're going to be proccing War Machine all the time. Tier 30, this is just situational. If you need the mobility, Double Time is really good for extra charges. If you need the stun, Stormbolt is the only stun that we have access to as warriors, so you'll want to take that. And if you don't need either of those, Impending Victory can give you a little bit of a self-heal, but is generally not really that great. It is a 20% heal, but it does cost rage, and it doesn't do all that much damage. So I would say generally take Double Time if you need the mobility, and Stormbolt if you need the stun. One of those two. Impending Victory will have some uses, I'm sure, but I wouldn't take it in most situations. Tier 45. These talents are all simming pretty close together as well. Massacre is the most fun talent in this row to run with, I think, just based on what I've been playing so far. It gives you execute now on targets below 35% health. That almost doubles your execute range. Fervor of Battle allows you to replace Slam as your single target filler with Whirlwind, and it causes Whirlwind to do more damage and also to give you a free Slam on your primary target. So that's a nice damage buff and a nice quality of life buff if you're doing something like a Fortified Mythic Plus, where the majority of your time is going to be spent on trash. This gives you a nice little bit of passive cleave. Rend is also strong, but it's not significantly stronger than these other two abilities, and it does give you an extra thing to juggle on the rotation. If that's something that you're looking for, or if you want to have the bleed for a specific situation, like you're doing arenas and you want to be able to keep rogues and druids out of stealth, then Rend will be really good to go with. But ultimately, these are all close together, and it's going to come down to what situation you're in to decide which talent you're going to roll with. 260, Bounding Stride is the strongest in general here, but Second Wind, if you can make use of the heal, is really good. And Defensive Stance, if you're doing a lot of things where you think you're going to be taking a lot of damage and you can afford to reduce the damage you're dealing, then Defensive Stance can be good. Think about things like Arena, where you know you're going to get focused, then Defensive Stance is good to start with, so you just take less damage to begin with. But Bounding Stride in general is going to be a strong choice in this tier just for the mobility. Tier 75, we've got Collateral Damage, which causes your abilities to refund 20% of their rage cost when they hit a second target from Sweeping Strikes. So if you're in a 2 or 3 target cleave situation, this can be a really strong talent to have, particularly on 2 targets, because Sweeping Strikes only hits 1, and then this gives you more rage back. And, you know, having Warbreaker in that scenario isn't really as important. Being able to get more rage to use more harder hitting abilities is really nice. If you're in more of an AoE situation, then Warbreaker is going to be your go-to because it gives you an AoE Colossus Smash, and you can use that and then Blade Storm, and you'll be dealing extra damage for the duration of Blade Storm to all of the enemies around you. It does the exact same damage as a regular Colossus Smash, so it's not a single target buff. None of these talents are going to be all that useful in fact, they're not really going to be useful at all in single target encounters. Cleave gives you Cleave. It's a talent now, unfortunately, but it does have a little bit of a change. So it doesn't have the mechanic where it buffs Whirlwind, but it does have a mechanic where if you hit at least 3 targets, it will inflict your Mastery, which is Deep Wounds, on those targets, which is a pretty strong ability for 3+ target cleave situations, and it has a really short cooldown. It's only 7.2 seconds with my current gear. I want to say it's 9 seconds reduced by haste. You can double check that, but I believe that's what it is. So you can use it really frequently and get your bleeds rolling on all the targets around you, as long as there's 3 of them to hit with it. So for more sustained AoE, Cleave is going to be good. For burst AoE, Warbreaker is going to be good, and for just sustained 2, maybe 3 target cleave, but probably mostly just 2 target cleave, Collateral Damage is going to be your go-to. Tier 90, we've got In for the Kill, Avatar, and Deadly Calm. All of these are pretty good, with the slight edge going to In for the Kill or Avatar. So In for the Kill just gives you that sweet little haste buff whenever you use Colossus Smash, or in this case Warbreaker. And one thing to note about it is if you are in the actual execute phase, so under 20%, this is not modified by Massacre. You have to be under 20% health. If the enemy is under 25% health, sorry, 20%, not 25, not 35, under 20% health, then you get double the haste bonus. So that's really nice. And then Avatar is just a really nice DPS cooldown. For 20 seconds, you deal 20% increased damage. It frees you of all roots and snares, and it gives you 20 rage to boot so that you can get right back into your rotation. This is particularly strong if you pop Avatar and then hit Colossus Smash or Warbreaker. You know, double up those DPS windows whenever you can. But probably going to end up going with one of these 2. Deadly Calm is probably going to have some situational uses, but I don't see a situation where it would be stronger than Avatar or In for the Kill. Tier 100, I have Anger Management from my Warrior Legendary Ring, and this would actually be the go-to talent for now, I believe. Every 20 rage you spend reduces the remaining cooldown on Warbreaker, that's Colossus Smash, remember, and Blade Storm by 1 second. So this is how you are going to get the cooldown reduced for your major DPS cooldown, which is 30% damage for 10 seconds. It's a 45-second cooldown by default. So if you can bring that down to, let's say, I don't know, 30 seconds, like 30 to 35 seconds on average, that's going to be a really strong talent to have. So you can make more use of your big damage cooldown window ability. Dreadnought is what I'm taking because I don't have this, and what this does is it gives a second charge to Overpower and then increases the damage of your next Mortal Strike by an additional 10%. So baseline Overpower increases the damage of your next Mortal Strike by 20%. With this talent Dreadnought, it increases it by 30%. So that gives you more of that building up to a big Mortal Strike gameplay, and it makes it a lot easier to work those in, right? So you have 2 charges. You can charge in, go overpower, and then Warbreaker and Mortal Strike, and you know, it's for a lot more damage than it otherwise would. So that's what Dreadnought does. And then there's Ravager. If you watch my previous videos, you know I'm not a huge fan of Ravager. I don't think it's all that much stronger than Blade Storm. I know some people disagree, but the problem is you take Ravager and it replaces Bladestorm, but then you don't get one of these other two talents, right? So even if it is stronger than Bladestorm baseline, which it is, it does more damage and it allows you to... no, it does a little bit less damage over a longer duration, but it allows you to continue using your other abilities, and it generates rage each time it deals damage. So overall, it is a DPS buff compared to Bladestorm. It would be stupid if it was not a DPS buff compared to Bladestorm, but you don't get Dreadnought or Anger Management, which are very strong DPS abilities for the way the ARMS toolkit works right now. So there are going to be situations, like big AoE situations, where you probably want to take Ravager, do something like, you know, Warbreaker and Ravager, and then you're going to be able to line those up. At least every other use of Ravager for some big AoE damage, but ultimately I don't really see myself making much use of Ravager. Maybe you will, maybe you can disagree with me in the comments down below. Feel free to do so. Always open for feedback and constructive criticism. So that's the talent tree. These are the talents that I'm running with in the pre-patch. There is a little bit of flexibility for ARMS right now, but I think these are generally a good go-to set. And then just as a reminder, on tier 100, I would take Anger Management over Dreadnought if I didn't have the ring. So I would prefer that talent over Dreadnought just for more Colossus smashes or Warbreakers. Let's take a quick look at the PvP talents. As I talked about in the free video, the PvP talent system has changed, so you now have 4 talent slots available. The first one is just which PvP trinket you want to use, and then for the second, third, and fourth, you get to choose any of your available PvP talents to fill those slots. So Sharpened Blade is probably always going to take up one of those slots. It gives you a buff to Mortal Strike damage and then reduces the healing that the target takes after you Mortal Strike for 4 seconds by 50%. So this is an incredibly important ability for ARMS in setting up kills in whatever kind of PvP content you're doing. Because, you know, even a lot of DPS classes, if they don't have a healer with them, this is going to negate their self-healing and allow you to set up the heal, or set up a kill, and then that 30% damage on your Mortal Strike is going to stack with your overpower buff, so you can get a really big overpower and Sharpened Blade buff to Mortal Strike that allows you to put a lot of pressure into your opponents. So that's always going to have a spot. The other two that I was running with in Battlegrounds are Death Sentence for the charge and execute. This is really useful. Even if you're rooted, you can still execute from 15 yards away, you just won't charge to your target. But you do have that 15-yard range on execute. Really useful ability, really useful talent, because, you know, when you get people into the execute range, they tend to try to run away, and this allows you to close the gap and keep up that pressure while you try to secure the kill. And then I was taking Storm of Destruction for just the random battlegrounds that I was running. It reduces the cooldown of Bladestorm by 33%. So baseline Bladestorm is a 1.5 minute cooldown. This brings it down to 1 minute. So, you know, one of the important uses of Bladestorm in PvP isn't just the damage, it's also that you have a CC immunity that you can use if you are trying to get some spread pressure or just stay on a target. Really useful ability. It gives it to you more frequently, and it causes Bladestorm to apply your Mortal Strike debuff. So that really helps with spread pressure. If you get a group of, let's say, I don't know, 5 enemies stacked up together, and you pop Bladestorm on them, you're going to be reducing all of their healing taken by 25% for 10 seconds. So that's really strong. In other situations, probably Disarm or Spell Reflect would be good in the slot. Duel is also really good if you're trying to make sure that you're able to peel off of your healers. War Banner is good if you are facing teams or players that have a lot of crowd control abilities. This allows you to mitigate those and also to give a movement speed buff so you can stick on targets a little bit better. Shadows of the Colossus gives you more frequent access to your overpower, and it gives you more rage from charge. So if you take this talent, every time you charge a new target, you will get a charge of overpower, and then you'll also have more rage, so you can go like overpower into Mortal Strike a lot easier and a lot more consistently. And then Master Commander still brings the cooldown of Commanding Shout down to 2 minutes. I think, yeah, that's an interesting bug that we just found there. This should be the cooldown not of Commanding Shout, but of Rallying Cry. That's a tooltip that didn't get updated. Maybe we'll have to submit a little report for that if there isn't one already out there. But those are the PvP talents for arms. If you guys have any questions about the Arms Warrior, let me know in the comments down below, and I will do my best to get an answer to you when I'm able to. I think Arms is looking pretty good. Let's charge in and just beat up this dummy for a little bit. Get our stacks going, and then big Mortal Strike. Spend some more Rage. There's a proc of Overpower. Get a Mortal Strike in there, and let's Blade Storm for the lulz. For the fun. So this is the Arms Warrior. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it, and I've enjoyed playing Arms tonight. Yeah, really happy with how Arms has turned out going into BFA. It's a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. If you've enjoyed this content, if you want to see more BFA World of Warcraft content, please consider subscribing to the channel. We are trying to put out 3+ streams a week, as well as at least 2 videos a week. The stream schedule is right now Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We've got a couple of different times that we stream at during those days. One early in the morning and the other later at night. And then we are doing videos on Tuesday and Thursday with some bonus content on the weekends when we've got time to get that going. Until next time, my friends, I hope you have a great day, and I hope to see you in that next video. Thanks. Bye-bye.